Yeah, I'm recording now. This is it. This is how we start the podcast.
Oh, I'm recording as well.
That's convenient.
Shall we crack on with it?
I think we should probably start.
Oh, nice. I might just leave this bit in, to be quite honest.
Okay.
It's quite amusing. Anyway, hello, and if you suffered through that horrible intro, my name's Ashley Green, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and the amazing co-host that is Aidan O'Sullivan. How are you doing today, sir?
Where has this come from? We've literally been talking for the last sort of 20 minutes or so, and now you've given me a theme tune, you've got an accent, you're really committed to this. I love it.
Well, I just don't want these podcasts to go stale, because there's nothing worse than listening to a podcast and just hearing the same old, welcome to episode 17, today we're going to be talking about,
Well, it's exactly that. What I particularly loved is the very creative way in which you decided to introduce the podcast.
Oh, that's strange, that, don't you?
It's almost as if it was planned, except it wasn't. It really wasn't. That's the worst bit. It just feels like it was planned.
Spontaneous, creatively spontaneous, because today's episode, today's month even, we're going to be spending the whole month talking about creativity. And today we're going to be talking specifically about the use of creativity in developing new material. So I thought it'd be good, just maybe pass over to you and go from there, really.
Brilliant.
I don't know where that was going. It just kind of went a little bit awkward there.
It's just spontaneous awkwardness. That's fine. So I think before we do anything, I think we should probably all make sure that we're on the same level in terms of what creativity actually is. So for me, my understanding of creativity isn't the idea or the belief that somebody can do these like really lots of like varied, interesting things. Instead, I see creativity as the ability to use our own minds to put ideas together. And in fact, the Google definition, I actually wrote this down just before we started recording, the Google definition of creativity is the use of imagination or original ideas in order to create something. So your ability to use your own thoughts and your own ideas to put them together to do a thing. And in this episode, we're talking about the idea of tricks and actually creating routines and tricks and things like that. But that's the kind of angle we're going to be approaching it from. And I think what's important to know, it kind of one of my favourite phrases of all time comes from Einstein. And he said that creativity is simply intelligence having fun. I know I've got into lots of internet debates about this over the last few weeks. But for me, like, people say, oh no, I don't believe that. You don't have to be intelligent to be creative, and you don't have to be like, not all intelligent people are creative, and like all these weird and wonderful arguments. So actually, what do you think about that? First of all, creativity is intelligence having fun.
I don't think you can say anyone's not intelligent, because we all shine in our individual areas, and if you are intelligent in a certain area, then you're going to be creative in that area because you know about it. So to be honest, I would probably agree with that. I mean, when I was younger, I used to assume that I wasn't really creative, and even going back a couple of months ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm fairly intelligent in what I do, trying to not sound egotistical there. But I just didn't consider myself creative. And it was only really in the last few months that I've realised, actually, I think I am slightly in what I've put together with my performances and some of the tricks I've come up with. So, to be honest, I think everyone is creative, and I think it also links into confidence. So as well as just saying creativity is just intelligence having fun, I think it's intelligence having fun with the confidence to execute it.
I like that.
That's probably what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, from my understanding of this, just before we jump into the application to tricks and things, but my sort of understanding is that the whole idea and the whole concept of having a creative idea, it involves two or more initial ideas or stimulus or pieces of information from inside of your head to be sort of squished together and actually bringing those two ideas together. For example, I'm sure we've all been in those situations before that we've been thinking about tricks and routines, and we've been thinking, well, I'd love to have this thing happen. I'd love to be able to tell my spectator their date of birth, but I don't know how to get it. Do I peek? Do I have them write it down? How do I do that? And then all of a sudden this other idea comes out from, like, zings out of nowhere. It's like, oh my gosh, I remember I read on page 53 of this ancient old book a genius way of finding that. And then you pair these ideas together and you're able to create this trick. So for me, creativity it's not something that, it's like a muscle. We all have to practice it, and the more you try and be creative, the better you'll be at it. But this idea of pairing information and pairing ideas together can really help you go a long way. And I think that if you can do that, that's a level of intelligence in and of itself, like a level of creative intelligence. So
yeah, I mean, training that creative muscle is something which, everyone can do to improve their creativity. I know you've got some fantastic points on that indeed, but I think the thing which people can start to do straight away, if they're sat there saying, I do struggle with creativity, maybe they lack that confidence to accept that they are creative individuals and let their creativity flow, maybe they can just start journaling. Whenever an idea pops into their head, rather than just dismissing, that's rubbish, just write it down and just try and elaborate on it. And it's through doing that you're getting into the creative process. And over the next week or so, you might kind of write 100 naff tricks or things or presentations down which you wouldn't want to show your best mate because they're really awful. But eventually, through going into that, you'll eventually come up with one fantastic idea, and you'll be like, hang on a minute, I can go further with this, and this is a piece of gold. And I think that's where it starts. Just accepting that not every idea you're going to come up with is going to be good. I think it's impossible to just come up with a brilliant idea every week. I mean, Christ's sake, you look at me in TSM, how many times do I speak to you, Aidan? And it's like, I think we should do this. And you're like, nah, that's rubbish. And I'm like, I think we should do that. And you're like, nah, it's still not great. And I'm like, well, this, and this. And you're like, no. And then there's one time where I'll go I've had this idea about that. And you're like, that's gold. And then we do it.
Well, this is the way to go. You've got to get through all of the terrible ideas. If you go through through life in general with this idea that you want to only be doing good things, or you only want to be doing the best ideas, and you only want to be showing off the best of your ability, and you don't want bad ideas, you're going to hit these roadblocks, and you're going to have these problems because we always have ideas that suck. I mean, again, you mentioned that you have a load of ideas and then strike a piece of gold when it comes down to TSM. Again, it's the exact same the other way. It's one of those situations where you've just got to get rid of all of the naff ideas in order to filter through and find the stuff that works. And you mentioned journaling, and I just want to quickly touch on that a little bit more, because that was actually a question asked in one of the Mentalism Facebook groups the other day. And I put a little comment in there because I actually use 3 different types of journaling. So I do it like a morning journaling, which is literally just a brain dump of anything that's in my head, plus some gratitude and bits and pieces, because if you're interested, the psychology behind that it's incredibly powerful. I won't bore you with that here. I also, in the evening, I plan my next day in advance. So I write a list I review what I've done each day. I tick off things, and I just make a little comment on how I progress towards my bigger goals. And then I also plan the following day. So I do that in the evenings as well. But in terms of the magic tricks and mentalism tricks and all of this kind of stuff, the presentation of mentalism, I actually have a physical notebook, and I write all of my ideas. In fact, I've got multiple, but I write all of my ideas down, and when it's convenient, I get them chucked into this notebook, so that it's that one place where all of my ideas are, whether they're good, whether they're bad, I don't care. I just want them in there, because they're all in that one place where you can scroll back through, and just, even if you're just literally just flicking through the pages and then think, I remember that idea, it just brings it back into your head to think about again, because our minds are terrible storage units, absolutely terrible. So if you can get it out of your head and onto the page, you're going to keep hold of it for a lot longer.
Great advice. So what you're saying is all of our brains are like a cheap SD card from Poundland.
Sure, that's not a metaphor that I was playing with, but we will roll with that.
That's the episode title. Your brain is a cheap SD card from Poundland.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So I think it would be great at this point, now that people kind of know our ideas behind creativity, is actually talk about how we apply all these skills and how we, apply the creativity to coming up with new tricks and routines, and let people know what our creative processes are. And for me, I just want to spend a moment talking about an example of when I was coming up with my online show. I always find it really hard to come up with ideas when I kind of want them. So when I wanted to come up with my with the ideas for my online show and kind of piece that together, what I done was I just kind of shut the door and I practically laid in bed for like 3 days straight, just kind of thinking about nothing. I didn't want any distractions around me, and I just kind of let my thoughts flow in and out. And I wasn't like writing down, I wasn't like reading all this, but I was just letting my current thoughts just kind of go forward, and I was thinking, what if I do this, and I was kind of like visualizing how it looks in my head, and going through that whole creative process in my brain, and just letting my thoughts go wild. And then eventually, after a few days, it just kind of struck me at like the most obscure point, when I think I was like in the toilet or something like that. I was like, oh my god, there's a show. But do you think that, like, from a psychology point of view, it's because I've got rid of the distractions around me and I'm letting my thoughts go wild in that one particular area, that it opens up the opportunities for those golden piece of information to just kind of come in?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are elements to it. I think when we spend so long, like it just in our like everyday life, we're just thinking about things in the odd moment as we're scrolling through social media, or we scroll through and we see, oh well, that's a cool idea, I could probably use that, save that, or screenshot that idea, and then we leave it for later, and then we don't really do a lot with it, or it never really comes up. But what you're mentioning here is this ability to literally just stop and focus completely on what it is that you're after. And something that I've been researching an awful lot lately is the idea of what's known as a flow state. Now, I've given some coaching calls, and we've spoken to this to a bunch of people on this subject. But the flow state is essentially it's described as the optimal state of consciousness in which you both perform at your best and you feel your best. So again, it's one of those situations where it's like the feeling where you just zone out completely and nothing else matters, and you're just completely committed to the task. And like, as you're doing something, nothing else matters. Like, you're not even thinking about anything else. And then when you finish that task and you step back and you think, oh wow, like, okay, I finished that. And I think in this situation, with you thinking of these ideas, you shut out all of these distractions, and you may or may not end up going into a flow state. But the idea here is that you're just committed to that one specific task of, I need to write a show. I need to get ideas. I'm planning a routine. I need to get ideas. I need a new trick. I need to get methods. Like, doing all of that and just giving yourself the freedom to just think is going to help you so much in terms of the level of creativity that you're going to just have access to. Does that make sense?
Oh, perfectly.
Hey there guys, it's Aidan here from the Successful Mentalist podcast, just interrupting for a quick second to say thanks for listening. No, of course, if you have just got a few moments, bring out your phones, whack the little subscribe button on. Yep, you know, the one that says subscribe, just press that button. And again, you're going to get updates from every time that we drop a new episode. You'll get those notifications straight into your mobile device or wherever you're listening to us. And again, it'll help boost our stats and get us out to more magicians and entertainers across the world, which is exactly what we want. Anyway, I'm going to leave you to go back to the podcast now. But make sure you subscribe. Do it. Do it. Again, just to quickly throw it out there for anybody who is interested in flow and actually researching a little bit more about this, if you head over to the Flow Research Collective, they've also got a podcast as well. So there's another podcast for you. It's called the Flow Research Collective Radio. And they break down what it is to enter flow, and there's lots of different really valuable resources. And Stephen Kotler has written an awful lot of books on it as well. So just a further reading if you want.
This is why Aidan knows so much, because he's basically been spending the past week talking to the entire team at Flow Research Collective. So
it's true.
Yeah, there we go. So if you guys want to talk to Aidan a little bit more about flow or check that out, feel free to drop us a message and head over and subscribe to their podcast. But I'm curious to know your process when you want to come up with a new routine or like a new trick or show or performance. Like for me, like I mentioned, I lock myself away and I think I need to do this, and I let my thoughts go wild and let it kind of pieces together. I'm curious what your creative process is.
So for me, it's a little different. I love music. It's probably the most profound, important thing in my entire life. I listen to all sorts of music, whether that's instrumentals or just pop, rock, just you name it. It's in my Spotify playlist. I won't go into that now, but I use music to try and get inside of my head and think of an emotion. And I always like tying emotions to my shows and to my routines, whether it's over or not. I want to try and give myself that emotional connection to what it is that I'm creating. So playing a piece of music, or even just playing some just YouTubing some waves, just lapping over the sea, or forest noises or something, just something to get me into this position of just calm and focus. That's one of the little things that I do. But in terms of creating the actual routines, it varies. So sometimes I kind of have a vision of what it is that I want. I literally just, as same as you, think of, right, this is the kind of thing I want. How can I make that happen? Or how can I make that a little bit bigger, a little bit better? How can I make it a better trick, if you like? And then just start thinking of ways there. I literally spitball ideas in my head, and I try and get as many of them going out as possible. I write everything down. I scribble. I do a lot of scribbles when I'm writing new shows. Again, you've seen I'm rewriting my show at the minute. You've seen it's crazy, and to the point that
I've seen the way you write the shows. It's not even in English. It literally is scribbles.
It literally is scribbles, but it tells me everything I need to know about the show. So again, it really doesn't matter how you try and write your shows or write your routines and your tricks and things, so long as they just make sense to you. So for me, I find that music is a really, really good help to boosting my creative process and giving me that connection to what it is that I'm after. I think about what it is that I want, and sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I don't really know what kind of routine I want. So instead I flip it, what do I think an audience would want? If it's a close-up gig, what do I think that they would want in this situation? How would they want me to perform, or what would they want me to perform? And then how can I go a step beyond that? So I try and think about the problem in as many different angles as possible. And I find that for me, that's really, really useful.
I remember actually as well when when I was at the Young Magicians Club, I was sat there. I can't remember how old I was. I was young, and the magician, I think it's Angelino Carbone.
Oh, yeah.
He came out and he Angelo Carbone, yeah, whatever. I probably said his name wrong, but you get the idea. If you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. Anyway, cool, very creative magician. And he came out with slips of paper, and he had different boxes. He'd have object, trick, and method. And he said, you randomly pick a piece of paper from each box. You've got an object, trick, and a method, and you have to piece them all together to create a routine. I thought, what a fantastic exercise. All the tricks we came up with were super, super silly. But it's a great way of just kind of training that creative muscle as well. I think we pulled out a hat, levitation, and air pump or something like that. So we had this idea of using mirrors and an air pump to levitate a hat. Completely silly idea, but it really gets your creative juices flowing and really trains you to think a bit more creativity and look at things differently.
I think,
and it kind of links me onto my
I think that's a brilliant idea. Giving yourself this opportunity to just think silly as well. I know it sounds ridiculous, but you've got to give yourself the opportunity to just think silly and just really dream big when it comes down to creating a trick. Sure, you might be revealing a thought of playing card. That could be the absolute trick. But turn it into something crazy. How could you in the process not only reveal the playing card, but could you tell them everything about their lives? How could you go into, imagine they simply think of a playing card, and then everybody else in the entire room, in the entire venue, is able to just have this playing card pop into their mind at the exact same time. You really go as huge as you can and just think, because then again, you train your brain into that level of creativity. So again, exercises like that, we'll probably talk about it in the next episode as well, but improv classes as well, they can be useful for some people, but give yourself the opportunity to think big, think silly, because that's where the good ideas come from.
Yeah, exactly that. And it kind of leads on to my next point, really. Like last week, obviously, we were speaking to Dan Sperry in a fantastic episode, which if you haven't listened to that, scroll back. It's literally episode 16. We talk about Dan, about a whole variety of things, and even go into some crazy little conspiracies, which is quite fun. But he obviously doesn't come up with his own tricks. He's very open about that. But what he does do is put a beautiful creative spin on every single thing he performs. Like he'll buy the tricks or get the tricks from other people, but he really makes it his own. And of course we do a mixture of that, both of us. We have things which we perform which are our own, but then we also have other tricks and methods which are other people's, but we have such a real spin on it now. It really makes it like suited to us. And like, when you do this, do you have a different process to creating a different spin on that trick, or is it a similar sort of creative process to what you mentioned as coming up with like a new show?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, where possible, I like to try and either create my own material but again, like that's not always the case. Sometimes I have to use other people's methods and other people's things just because it's a best fit situation for the moment. So I think that's the most important part, is when you're looking at adapting other people's tricks, is to think maybe not taking the entire trick, but is there just a bit of it that you can take? Like, for example, you see, I don't know. Well, here's literally a direct example. I watched a few years ago. I watched Darren Brown's Enigma, the stage show, for the first time, and it blew my mind. The ending to Enigma, with I'm sure everybody that's watched it can still remember the song. It's stuck in our heads. But with all of the objects spelling it. If you haven't watched it, I'm 90% sure it's on YouTube. I think Darren's uploaded it himself. So go give that a watch. But the ending to there, with all of the different objects that are all in the right order and all of that crazy stuff, that for me was like a brilliant routine. And then again, that originates actually from the basis of a burglass routine that was updated for the show. But I loved that trick, if you like. I loved that idea behind that trick, and so I kind of took it to myself and thought, right, how do I do it? But the method was like, my methods for my version of a similar trick is completely different. But what I enjoyed was the randomness and the fairness of that. So instead of taking the entire trick, I just pulled out my favorite bits, the randomness and the fairness of the process, and that is what channeled into the trick that I ended up putting together. Just as a slight difference, that routine, although I was actively thinking about that routine, I was actually sat in a meeting in an office the other months ago, early last year. I don't even know when it was. It was a while ago. I've had this routine for a long time. But literally I was sat in a meeting not thinking magic and mentalism, and the entire routine just popped straight into my head, literally instantly. And I was like, okay, I scribbled it down in the back of my notebook and literally came back to it after the meeting and just refined it, and it was all there. So again, sometimes the more like you practice creativity and this whole idea of inspiration as well, that's another topic we could probably talk about. It all just kind of ties in together. So I know that's a long-winded way of me basically saying, look at other people's tricks. If you're going to use them, only try and use the best bits or the bits you resonate with most. But that's what's going to instantly set you apart, because you're not copying word for word, routine for routine.
Exactly. And when an idea does come down, it's so important to write that on your notes, on your phone, on a piece of paper, because you will forget. You've already said Poundland SD cards are our brains. You need to get that on the paper. So yeah, it links into a point that, you know, when we had one of our coaching calls with someone the other day, they were talking about, I think, a line from a performer, Ken Dine, about like, think of the most impossible piece of information you can. And we was, you know, going back and forth about how it doesn't suit. And that's because everyone's individual. What might work for someone might not work for you. You might buy a DVD set, and you've got to bear in mind that everything on there kind of works for that performer, but you're not them, so you're not going to literally be able to take it. And I mean, you shouldn't take it and just literally do it like that, because how many other people are also going to be doing that? You want to be different and stand out. But if you really want to be true to yourself and you really want to, deliver an amazing first-class performance, you can't take it because your audience will just think, oh, that's weird, that's not him, and it will kind of conflict with your character. So yeah, like you've said, when you read a book or whether you watch something on a DVD, you need to take the bits which, okay, that's cool, and then you've got to sit down with it and just let the inspiration come in. Just like write down all the bad ideas, write down all the good ideas, how you can make it yours, and eventually it will just kind of hit you and you'll be like, cool, now I've adapted that routine to suit. So now you're not coming up from something straight away, but you're using like a DVD set or trick from somewhere as almost a source of semi-inspiration to come up with something semi-new, even though it is basically the thing on that DVD. It's just more suited towards you, your character, and your performance.
Well, exactly that. I think sometimes it's a presentational element that you might want to take away. Sometimes it literally can be as big as the entire method of the trick. And then you dump your own presentation and your own approach on top of that. That's really, really important. And it goes back to what we've been, we say it a lot, but it's so fundamentally important to really get to grips and understand your character and understand who you are playing. And again, we've got countless resources available on that subject already. I mean, if you want to jump back to episode 5, we did a podcast on a episode on how to find your character. We've got the workbook as well that was associated with that. We've done, literally
episodes 13 and 14, psychological characters and psychic characters.
Exactly.
So we've done a lot on this.
We've got a lot. It's something that we're both really, really passionate about, and it is so important because as soon as you understand who you are and what you're trying to show through your performances, everything else will get easier. Just this approach to creativity will become so much easier, and this is why I have a big appreciation for the work of the people that consult for other performers, because they're not just creating ideas for themselves, they're actually having to create with another person in mind. And sometimes that's easy, and perhaps, and I know that Colin has spoken about this in several places, but sometimes his approach is to create routines as if he was going to gift it to a friend of his. Like he creates routines as if he was consulting, but then just keeps the idea for himself. So maybe that's a useful exercise. Maybe you picture whatever it is that you're trying to be on stage, that person that you're trying to be on stage, or in a close-up environment, or you try and just picture whatever it is that you are trying to be, that character, and then write routines for them as an external person. Because then you can visualize it. That'll be a really useful tool to help visualize the routines, which is something that, again, is incredibly important. But if you could do that, visualize it from their perspective, and then instantly steal the material, you're kind of giving yourself, well, free material, and free ideas, and free presentations, and free scripting, and all of that stuff. So again, there's maybe something.
Psychological life hack. Love it.
You always got to do it. Well, for me anyway. I'm obsessed.
There we are. Well, talking of consulting, I mean, that's very similar to coaching, isn't it? Which, if you guys are interested in having a one-on-one coaching call with myself and Aidan, if you want to take our advice and maybe jam with us and go a little bit further to really get us helping you improving your magic, mentalism, business, performance, mindset. We've even had like some entrepreneurs messaging us about these coaching calls, which is mad. But yeah, if you want to talk to us about any of that, just head over to thesuccessfulmentalist.com/coaching. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that obviously reviews these podcasts. It's amazing that you've taken the extra few moments to really just share your thoughts and let people know that our podcast is something worth listening to. So thank you so much to everyone that listens to those.
Awesome.
That writes those even. I've just slurred my words.
Yeah, that was going so well, and then
intro was cringy, exit was cringy. It's all cringe.
I kind of want to it's been a really long exit to this episode. Can we drop some gold? Right here, 3 tips from your end to boost creativity. Just for the people that will have tuned out, they'll miss the gold.
Yeah, you guys keep the gold because you're committed. You stay to the end. Number 1, just try and get rid of the distractions around you. Put your phone on silent. Stop picking it up, looking at it. It will just distract you. You'll end up on an hour swipe through Instagram. Number two, number one, ignore distractions. Number two, no matter if something's bad, write it down, get into that, process of just getting used to the ideas and going from there. And number three, just have fun. Just have fun in what you do. And there's my three little tips.
Some great tips. If I was going to wrap up with three simple tips, it would be very much just similar. Just write everything down. Absolutely, that's so important. Get everything written down, and just start trying to pair ideas. Actively go through them, flick back through them, and try and connect up any ideas, and just have fun going crazy with these ideas. Part two: dream big, think big. Be as weird and as creative as you possibly can, because through the chaos and the carnage, there will be gold. I pretty much guarantee that. Third, don't be afraid to talk to other people as well. Get ideas from other people. Chances are, if you're on a creative dip or you're not having that sort of creative energy, just bat it over to somebody else. Like, here's my situation, help. And chances are most people will be able to help, whether they're lay people or even performers. So it's entirely up to you. But there we go. 6 little nuggets of gold for the people who got through the cringy end bit. Unless Ashley's got anything else to add, then this will be the end of this episode. Join us next week, in which we're going to be talking about creativity in your presentations. As usual, subscribe, jazz, insert words here. Catch you next week.